Uh, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves? Sorry, here we go. We're live.
Okay. Hey, I'm Lisa Vitelli. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have the honor of overseeing the early intervention program for the TheraPlay family of companies, serving as the Vice President of Contract Services. And my colleague to my left or right.
All right. Hello, my name is Melissa Clack. I am a community relations and outreach liaison for the TheraPlay family of companies, specifically in the western part of Pennsylvania. I have been with Positive Steps Therapy for roughly 10 years. I met them because of my son who needed services at age 3, but I never had heard of early intervention prior to that. So it is a passion of mine to get to educate professionals and parents every single day on what resources are available for their children.
And my name is Jim Kane. I'm a physical therapist with TheraPlay. I do early intervention birth to 3, mostly in Delaware County. I have done inpatient as well as schools. And I've been with TheraPlay for going on 24 years doing early intervention.
So Lisa, do you want to maybe give we could start out with talking about just an overview of early intervention, what that is and what it looks like, and I can kind of add in what the outpatient world looks like so that the families could actually hear what these different things are that are available for their kids?
That sounds great. So in early intervention birth to 3 services, we provide a coaching support and services to any families with children who are, again, birth to 3 years old with developmental delays or disabilities. And what's really unique and wonderful about early intervention is it's a family-centered model. It's very routines-based, so it's in that natural environment and all within the routines of your family. And the process starts out with an evaluation. And there's many ways you can access evaluations. You can contact the county in which you live, or you can even call there's a Pennsylvania hotline, as well as a Pennsylvania email, which we'll actually make sure that is in our notes associated with this Facebook Live. And in the evaluation, your child will be looked at across all developmental areas. And if your child qualifies based on eligibility criteria, you would establish an IFSP, which is an individualized family service plan. And we love the word individualized because it's really about your kid and your family and all specified to what your needs are. So if your child qualified, you would actually come up with a family and child outcome. And that's what the services would work on. And that outcome would actually determine what services would be provided.
I think it's really important at this point to just add into that. If you are a parent of a child that is premature, and nobody is uttering the words early intervention to you, it is something that you should be asking about yourself. Every day I talk to hospitals and physicians to make certain that this is part of the regular vocabulary. I think it is very important to know that if you're reaching out to an outpatient therapy, medical-based pediatric facility, and your child is birth to 3, there should still be conversation about early intervention, because when you fall in that category, you qualify for this evaluation to see if your child can receive these services that come into your home or your place of care for your child, and it is actually supported and paid for by the county that you reside in. So I think that's very important. So when you go into an outpatient facility in those age ranges, though we should be speaking to you about early intervention as well and letting you know it's available to you, but also know that outpatient services are also something that's available to you. That might be a better fit for your lifestyle. Everybody's different. Once again, that word individualized, Lisa. So in the outpatient world, it's just a little bit different where early intervention is a coaching model. When you come into the medically based world, it is based on play therapy and more of an education model where we're going to meet with mom and dad. We're going to work one-on-one with a child, not coaching mom and dad to do that, but more so working with the child on our own. And we establish what we call a plan of care. So that plan of care, much similarly, we're working on deficits and goals. But it is not based necessarily on having to qualify. Outpatient services differ in the sense that it is covered by commercial insurance or Medicaid, and it is based on different symptomatic criteria. So it's not something you qualify for per se. It really is based on like authorizations by insurance and things of that nature.
So Jim, you have a lot of experience with obviously the intervention piece of it in both lanes. Do you want to just talk about how sessions look and in both lanes?
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate, what you guys have touched on already, two different models, two different approaches. So I've predominantly done early intervention, and with early intervention, it's a teaching and coaching model. Meaning that you are going to go into the homes and you are going to teach families, the skills that you have so that they can carry it through with what they do on a daily basis. And also to help them out with their routines, with their daily lives, what things are difficult, what things can be challenging, and how they can best approach, getting their child to grow and develop in the best possible manner based on their lifestyles. So when you go in for an early intervention session, a lot of the sessions typically are in the beginning, finding out what's working, what's not working, what things, strategies that we're teaching the families are going well. And then you kind of get some feedback that way. So it's a lot of give and take. There is a certain amount of hands-on. It's not like we just go in and we sit back and we watch and we say, okay, well, do your thing, and then we're going to just watch you and give you instruction. Obviously, we have to get a feel for the child. We have to feel what their tone's like, their strength is like, their movement patterns, all that. So there is hands-on from the therapist, and then there's a lot of demonstration and instruction and feedback that's given to the parents. And we expect parents to be actively involved in every session. We want them to be very hands-on, asking questions throughout the sessions. It's vital for all that. And we want family members to be involved, siblings, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, babysitters, anybody that's a part of that child's life. We want them to be welcome in these sessions because we want them to be able to work on these things with the child when they're away from their home. And the other neat thing is about early intervention is we can go into settings outside the home. So obviously daycare is one setting where we see a lot of children, but we can meet at parks. We can meet at somebody else's house. We can meet in different settings if that is part of the child's routine and part of their natural setting. And parents want to work on those types of things. So it is a little bit different from the clinical model where, like Melissa was saying, the clinical model, sure, there's a lot more hands-on by the therapist. And it's it's medically based. So, you're sitting there and you're really working with the child one-on-one. Parents can be present. They don't have to be present. And certainly we want to pass on things for them to work on at home as well. But it's just two different types of models. And in many cases, they work well together. So, there's a lot of kids where, they're getting services in both outpatient and early intervention. It's a balance. It's what's important to the family and what works best for the family. And I do think that that's so important when we talk about the individualized care. In some cases, we have families that are getting multiple services. So, you kind of have to adjust your thinking sometimes so that it fits into the family's lifestyle and that they can manage all the different services that child might need. In a clinical setting, you might say, okay, well, this child needs two, therapy twice a week. Well, in the home care setting, that may not work based on many factors, some of which may be how many different therapy services are going into the house. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but trying to make it individualized and make it work for the family is the biggest thing.
I really love that you said that, Jim, because I agree in that medical model, it's discipline specific, where I think in early intervention, you're looking at everything together. And in the outpatient model, you're looking at speech services, and you have a speech session, you have an OT session. Now, can we co-treat? Absolutely. Co-treating does exist across disciplines. But again, there is a little bit of that difference in the model. And much like the coaching in the outpatient setting, I feel like we do a lot more home programming and family education, where they take it home and work on what we review. With the early intervention model, absolutely, that is like having a tutor on site. It's just
Seeing
perfect.
it happen. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Seeing it happen.
So and it even starts, Melissa, at that outcome. When that outcome is written, it's like, here's the outcome. What therapist would best support the outcome? So you may choose from a special instructor who's a teacher, or a speech pathologist, so and it really depends then on again, that individual child and what would best suit them at that phase. And it's also a fluid document, that IFSP. So it can change, you can have a speech therapist or a special instructor for a year, and then potentially you see that there may be more language problems and you'd bring a speech therapist in. And I think, just to Jim's point about the visits at home, one unique thing also about EI is that we don't bring things into the home. We don't bring toys, because we want to make sure that anything that we do and reflect with a family can be done with the natural environment and the natural items in that environment. And so I mean, remember, I've been a therapist for many, many years. And I remember early intervention many years ago, we would bring toy bags in, and those days are over. And it really is meaningful, because the parents don't have to go out and buy a special toy, or the child doesn't do well with the therapist. They do well within their family context. And it's really, really a wonderful model.
That's a great point, Lisa. The bag of tricks that we used to come in years ago with, and then, end of the session, you pack it up, walk out the door, and the parents were like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I make that work with what I have? So right. Yeah, it's much better this way. And I think that, it was a great idea when they kind of shifted gears and went that way with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, there was something else I wanted to add to that. When you go back from that old model to the coaching model, doing one part of my role, I talk to educators and preschool providers all the time. And what's really great is, through this past year, with things being a little unusual or a lot unusual, our relationships with the preschools and daycares has grown. And what's great is that early intervention services can be received there. And what I'm finding is more and more of those directors of those facilities are encouraging it. Not only are they encouraging it for the family, but they want to get also what they can from the instruction to help carry that over in the school and the phases of development. So I just want to highlight that is a conversation that's happening regularly, and the reception has been nothing but phenomenal. So
that is a good point. I think years ago, there was a little bit more resistance to having therapists come into daycares. It's interesting. It's almost as if maybe there was a feeling that they were going to be looking at what they were doing or something like that. But I do feel now that you see they are much more welcoming, and they want to know. They want to know what they can look for, what things they can work on with the kids. So it has gotten much more positive in recent years. Yeah.
I'm very aware of some families that have therapists, early interventionists, come out to a school or a daycare a couple sessions and then meet at a different time with the family when they're off work. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm almost suspicious sometimes when one of our interventionists has the same schedule every week, because really we're going with those natural environments. So if a child's working on issues around napping, you want to go around that nap time. And if a child's working on issues around feeding, you'd want to go around a mealtime. So we try, it's a scheduling nightmare for interventionists, but we really want to support that we are flexible to meet the families where they're at.
And I think, I say it all the time, and I just want to drive it home for anybody who's watching. Early intervention is called that for that very specific reason. There are studies out there that the earlier we intervene, the better our outcomes can be. So trust your gut as a parent, talk to your physicians. Ask your questions. There's no silly question. There's no textbook about this. And every single child is so fundamentally different that, asking the questions and getting in the evaluation, all it can do is set you up for success.
That's great. I think that's a great point, Melissa, because I honestly do, and I say this to a lot of parents, is nobody knows your child better than you. You may not know all the ins and outs. You may not have all the medical information. You may not have the, the education behind it, but you know your child. You know what your child's about. You know how they respond. You know when things might not be right. And it's not an easy thing to seek services sometimes, because you don't want, you don't, sometimes you sit there and you think, oh, I don't know if I want to know the answer. But I do think that, parents really, really, you're your child's best advocate. And, don't hesitate. The earlier, the better. It can't hurt. It can't hurt. It can only do good. So.
And I do want to share this. I have a personal story where a cousin of mine had their baby very, very early, premature. There were some complications. So naturally, the hospital told them about early intervention. I told them about early intervention, but they were already signed up. And that child is 9 months old, and he surpasses every milestone that he is supposed to. And I just think, it's fantastic that they heard about early intervention, that they signed up for early intervention early, they got the services, and they're seeing every single great result that you can see from it. I think it's just a testament to the program. I think it's really great.
That's great.
I don't know if we have any questions coming in from our moderator or not.
Yep, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for any audience questions. There are some folks still in the audience, so if you have any questions, please feel free at this time. Okay, well, if nobody in the audience has any questions, please feel free, because this is going to get posted to our Facebook after the fact. So if you do have any questions when you're watching this, go ahead and leave them in the comments, and we will circle around back and answer them. I'd like to thank Jim, Lisa, and Melissa for taking the time today. This was really informative. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely a pleasure.